How did you get into blues?
Well, I have always liked blues. I was raised in Texas, and of course, country music, as they called it when I was a kid, country and western music was the thing. My dad and I used to listen to like Lefty Frizzell and guys like that. But when I got into high school, I got into the early rock and roll, which basically was a brand of blues. And I probably had the first record of Little Richard in this part of the country. I remember my first record that I bought. I used to listen to a station late at night out of Fort Worth, Texas, KCUL, which is luck, spelled backwards. And it was a song called Going Down to Tijuana by Andre Williams. And I haven't heard of that name in years, but I would order these records out of Fort Worth. And then when I got into college, I had started a little band here in my hometown of Shamrock, Texas. And when I got to college, I kind of scouted around for a guitar player and maybe put a little band together, and just so happened the guitar player that somebody referred me to was a kid from a town called Burns Flat, Oklahoma. And I asked him what kind of music he liked, and he says, well, I kind of like, Elvis and Chuck Berry, and there's this blues guy I like named Jimmy Reed. And I said, oh, man, I've been digging on Jimmy Reed all through high school, And so anyhow, I got into blues at an early stage and made my way through college sitting on a drum stool, playing clubs around Oklahoma where I was going to college. And the band, we played all kind of music, but it had a slant towards blues. And I'll be darned if when I was out of college and working in radio and was still playing jobs in a band around Oklahoma City. And I'll be darned if the Beatles didn't come out at about that time. And a lot of those early Beatles songs, were old blues songs, and heck, we were already playing them. And so that's kind of how I got into blues, and I've just always loved it. And I managed radio stations for like 37 years after figuring out I was better at the marketing and management than being an on-air personality. And so I managed stations in Oklahoma City and went from Oklahoma City to Wichita, Kansas. And from there, I went to Jacksonville, Florida. And I was in Jacksonville, Florida for 16 years in station management. And came back to my little old hometown of Shamrock, Texas. My dad developed cancer, and I promised him I'd take care of Mom. And after he passed away, I couldn't get Mom to move to Florida, so I came to Shamrock. And after that, I kind of, in a little town, I got to doing karaoke, just doing some things I like to do. And a group I did some vocal and writing talent for that had some Chevrolet dealerships. They got into owning some radio stations, and so asked me if I wanted to be a part of it. And I said, look, I've worried about paying the bills of a radio station for quite a while. I'll help you out and do whatever you need me to do, but I don't want to be a financial partner. And one of the stations was a classic rock station, and the other stations were mostly country. But the owner of the group told me, he says, you like that blues, why don't you do a blues show? on our classic rock station. And I said, well, out here in Texas, you think that'll go? And he said, I don't know. Let's work up about 6 different episodes, and we'll just put her on the air and see. And so that's where Uncle Buck Plays the Blues got started. And it has been amazing. After we figured out that the show looked like it was going to have a local audience, we put it on the internet, and it's just been amazing. Get a lot of response out of Europe. A lot of musicians, a lot of blues musicians are listening to the show. And one example, a guy got in touch with me named Greg Copeland, is over in Germany, and he's from, I think it's West Virginia, and was in the military and married a German girl, and is now singing blues and has several albums out. And a lot of people like that, have picked up on the show. And one of my last episodes that I've done, a guy got in touch with me on Facebook and said that he and Tomika Dixon were doing their best to keep blues alive in Chicago. And lo and behold, Tomika Dixon is Willie Dixon's granddaughter. And we did a show together where she was the co-host, and it was all Willie Dixon music, And it had some really great response out of that. Nice. So that's kind of how I got into blues and up to the current date.
What kind of preparation goes into your show?
I've got a library that's grown to about, it's over 3,000 songs, and I kind of have nobody's telling me what to do, Brent. And so I have to like the song myself. And then I have to say, I think my audience would like it. And those are my 2 big criteria. So I go through my library, and the show is I call it an hour-long show, but nobody's watching the clock on me. So if it ends up being an hour and a half, it ends up being an hour and a half. You can do those kind of things in a small town and on the internet. And so I map out, my show has a structure. I try to open up with something that's a little upbeat and by a known artist. And just a song I think people will really kind of get into, even if they're not a blues fan. And then I have a featured artist each week, in which I give a little history on the artist and play a couple of songs by the artist, one in the beginning of the show and one, in the second segment of the show. And I do a regular feature called Then and Now, where I take a blues song by mostly a well-known blues artist like Howlin' Wolf, Muddy Waters, Jimmy Reed, some of those guys. And then in the second part of the show, I'll do a now version of Then and Now, which is, somebody that's, like Albert Cummings is a good example. It's his new album, Believe. He had he did Little Red Rooster, Willie Dixon's song, and which we did recently on a now version of Then and Now. And then I do 2 in a row and a double dose of the blues, and at the very end I do a thing called Tumo before we go, and play a couple of good blues songs back to back. After I do my features. But that's, and I doing an hour show a week, I can kind of do the creme de la creme, so to speak, of the blues, because I don't have to worry about repeating myself. And I do encore shows where if a show gets a lot of reaction or something, somewhere down the line, I'll I'll bring it back and play it again. You know, I do an outline of the show each week and just kind of pick and choose and kind of mold it together.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Back in the days when I was an announcer, you know, a DJ or whatever, a jock or whatever you want to call what we were in those days. Certainly nobody referred to anybody as an air personality, but, you know, we'd come on to do our shift and we would go into the record library and just pull our own music, you know, whatever we wanted to play, you know. So, and I kind of used, when I was running a band, and I didn't front the band, but I sat back there on the drum stool, did some singing, but mostly what I did was called the music, called the songs, the tunes that we were going to play. And so, you know, some of what I do on radio, I got experience of watching what people were going to dance to out on the dance floor. So, you know, my past radio history kind of goes into the way I program my blues show.
Nice. Can you talk about Texas blues versus other kinds of blues, if there's a difference in your opinion?
Oh yeah. I make you know, I'm in Shamrock, Texas, and it's a unique little town of a couple of thousand people, and we have a famous landmark here that's on historic Route 66. A lot of Europeans just love the Route 66 thing. And as a matter of fact, the landmark we have is called the U Drop Inn and Tower Station, which the likeness of it has been in all three of the Disney Cars movies. And even the new souvenir shop at Cars Land at Disney World in California is the likeness of our Tower Station and U Drop Inn here in Shamrock. But I talk about that in being raised in Texas. There was a little critter that used to run around called a horny toad. And I don't know if they had those up in Chicago. I doubt it. But I call it the Mother Road Toad, and we'll put one of them on my Instagram post along with things that I do on Instagram and Facebook. And people say, "What's the deal with that lizard?" You know. But when I was a kid, people would stop here, you know, to spend the night, or stop here for service stations along Route 66, and horny toads in those days were rather abundant. And I would go down and sell them to people on the highway that stopped for gas, you know, that came from New York or California, or that had never seen one. To go along with your question about Texas blues, you know, I make a big deal out of really playing all kinds of blues. I talk about playing Chicago blues, of course, because that's dominant, you know, in the blues world. I talk about New Orleans blues. I talk about California blues. People like Tommy Castro, you know, and Charlie Musselwhite, you know, and then even some East Coast blues. And seeing how we're broadcasting from the crossroads of America, Shamrock, Texas, I gotta play some Texas blues, you know. I've done one show as a tribute to Stevie Ray Vaughan, which was all Stevie Ray Vaughan music, and part of the show was actually cuts from a concert after Stevie Ray met his demise, but people like B.B. King and, of course, Jimmy Vaughan and Bonnie Raitt and Eric Clapton, and a lot of those guys were actually singing Stevie Ray Vaughan songs on the tribute show that I did. So, and, you know, of course, we just did the Willie Dixon tribute, and, you know, we're always featuring, like, this coming week, the featured artist is Gary Clark Jr., who, you know, is out of Austin, Texas. And amazing number of artists came out of Delbert McClinton and Angela Straley. That's a fixture down in Dallas, or Austin still. But, of course, some of the early guys like Lightning Hopkins and those guys, T-Bone Walker. Texas blues, has got a pretty good history, and of course Stevie Ray Vaughan gets a lot of credit for taking Texas blues and putting it out to the world, on another name that has done that same thing, Johnny Winters. But so I have to, being from Texas, and the Europeans seem very interested in that brand of blues also.
What's best and worst on-air experience or moment?
Well, let's see. I guess one of the worst experiences. I'll answer that question.
Okay, cool.
I guess one of the worst experiences when I was a high school kid and working in the local radio station, which was an AM radio station, KEVA, 1580 on the dial in Shamrock, Texas. And by the way, that little old station, the first announcer on that station was a guy named Bill Mack. And Bill Mack really made his mark in country music, and was quite a well-known disc jockey, the Midnight Cowboy, they called him, on WBAP in Fort Worth. He started at that same little radio station that I started at, and there were 5 of us that started at that station that ended up being professional broadcasters in one sense or another. But I was brand new in the radio business, and in those days, your commercials were on a record or were on a 8-track tape or a cassette, and you were quite busy, doing the news. You'd be shuffling this and doing that. After the news was over, a buddy of mine called me, and lo and behold, I had forgotten to turn the mic switch off. Oh, no. And he says, "How are you doing?" And I let loose with a bunch of explicitives that I'm kind of ashamed to repeat. And I was really ashamed that my dad even happened to be listening. But that was one of my worst experiences in radio, is having to live that down in a small town.
Yeah.
I've had a tremendous number of great experiences, managing stations over 35 years, closer to 40 years actually. I really had some great experiences and had some great people that I worked with. But at this day and time, when you say what is one of your greatest experiences, doing this blues show is right up there. Doing this blues show is right up there. My motto at this point in my life, seeing how I really don't have to answer to anyone. I don't have to take direction from a home office off in Timbuktu. So my motto is kind of, if it ain't fun or interesting, I just don't do it. And the blues show is definitely interesting, and it's a whole lot of fun for me.
You have a great radio voice. Do you work on it?
Yeah. The older I get, the deeper the voice seems to get. I was asked to, at one time, I think I was in Wichita, Kansas, and I was asked to I did a lot of local talent work, and I was asked to do a commercial for Arby's. And it was a new product they were bringing on the market, and it was about some kind of a stuffed baked potato that they were coming out with, and there was a line in there and they kind of gave me the direction on how they wanted it, and gave me the name of somebody that they kind of like the commercial to sound like, and there was a line that went something like, "Smothered in a sour cream sauce." And
nice.
after I did that commercial, car dealers would come to me, a lot of people would come to me, and they would say, hey, I want you to do my commercial, and I want you to sound like you did on that Arby's commercial. And the only way I could get into that voice was saying that line, smothered in a sour cream sauce. So, and being from Texas, when I lived in Kansas, and particularly after I moved to Florida, and I was in Jacksonville for like 16 years, and sometimes I would let my Texas accent slip out, so everybody was wanting me to do a country style voice, but I just kind of use my own voice and try not to sound too country, but like to have a little bit of a Texas unique accent, and I just kind of use the voice and let it flow like it flows.
Last question for you. What's next for Uncle Buck?
What's next for Uncle Buck? Well, career-wise, I'm just kind of going with the flow. You haven't asked me a question about age, but doing what I do and still able to do what I do. Next month I'll turn 81, and my Instagram and my Facebook posts. So I get a kick out of doing that, and most people that see me guess me being a lot younger. But when you get to be my age and doing some of the things that I'm still able to do, I take about a great amount of pride, of my age.
Yeah.
So what's next for me? Well, living through this ordeal that we're in is one thing, but people will ask me, they say, how you doing? I say, well, I'm upright and I'm breathing right. And they say that's two things you need to worry about these days. And I don't know why people still ask me, are you behaving? And I answer that one as, well, that gets easier every year. What's in store for me? Keeping going as long as I can, and spreading the blues around the world. That's my goal.
Nice.